Chapter 1. The sun had barely risen when the persistent sound of the alarm clock jolted me from my slumber, leaving me groggy and disoriented. I rubbed my eyes vigorously, attempting to shake off the stubborn remnants of my dreams and the deep enveloping sleep that had held me captive throughout the night. Gathering my strength, I quickly got out of bed and headed to the bathroom, my feet relishing the sensation of the cool tiles that contrasted sharply with the warmth of my cozy bed. I turned on the shower, allowing the warm water to wash over me like a soothing embrace, effectively dispelling the last traces of sleep and the memories of my dreams. As the water danced against the tiles, I felt a renewed sense of energy coursing through me, invigorating and preparing me for the day ahead. Hastily, I dressed in my work attire and darted out the door, my heart pounding as I realized I was already running late. Determined not to be the last one to arrive at the office, I knew I had to catch the bus that would deliver me to my destination. With a sense of urgency, I hurried down the street, the morning air still crisp and slightly chilled. As I traversed the familiar path, I suddenly encountered a bizarre and terrifying phenomenon. A tear in the very fabric of space-time materialized before me, taking the ominous form of a dark, swirling portal. It was eerily reminiscent of a black hole, voraciously consuming everything in its path. I watched in abject horror as objects and unsuspecting people were drawn into the portal, vanishing into the unfathomable darkness. Desperation gripped me as I tried to resist the portal's relentless pull. I could feel its overwhelming force drawing me closer, like a moth to a flame. I struggled to maintain my grip on a nearby light pole, but my efforts were futile. The portal's power was simply too great. Despite my best attempts, I found myself being dragged towards it against my will, my hands slipping from the pole. In that fateful moment, an unexpected blow from a flying garbage lid struck me, sending me hurtling towards the portal with a sense of impending doom. As the darkness encroached, dread filled every fiber of my being, knowing I was on the precipice of being consumed by the unforgiving void. Despite the terror that coursed through me, I plunged headlong into the portal, suddenly finding myself unable to move or breathe. Time became an enigma, and I could no longer discern whether I had been trapped for mere minutes or an eternity. Gradually, a glimmer of light pierced the suffocating darkness, beckoning me towards it. A surge of hope washed over me as I realized that escape from the void might still be possible. I was irresistibly drawn to the light, and as I neared it, I discerned that it was a gateway to an unfamiliar realm. Upon crossing the threshold of the portal, I found myself instantly encircled by a contingent of mysterious soldiers. Clad in armor and their faces concealed by helmets, they wielded menacing weapons and exuded hostility. Their swords pointed at me, and their intentions were clear. Roughly restrained, I was forced to join a group of other captives who had also unwittingly stumbled through the portal. I surveyed my surroundings and concluded that we were in an underground chamber of sorts, ancient and foreboding. Stone walls enclosed us, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth. In the center of the room stood the portal I had traversed, resembling a mysterious ancient machine of unknown origins. Corralled with the other prisoners, we were subjected to a rigorous inspection involving some form of magic. The soldiers barked orders, taking the procedure with utmost seriousness. To my horror, one captive resisted and was brutally slain by the soldiers without hesitation. The overseer of the inspection admonished the soldiers, but his words were met with cruel laughter. It became apparent that human life held no value here, and that these soldiers were a brutal, ruthless force. Fear and uncertainty gnawed at me as I pondered the grim fate that might await me in this hostile alien world. I closed my eyes, attempting to remain composed amidst the terror and desperation that gripped me. My situation was a mystery, and the consequences of the inspection were unknown. The only certainty was that I was at the mercy of these merciless soldiers, and my future hung in the balance. Abruptly, a hooded figure approached, speaking in a mysterious language I couldn't comprehend. The soldier stepped back, permitting the hooded man to draw nearer. He addressed me harshly, and I could sense the malevolence and hatred seething within his words. The hooded man placed a mysterious orb on my forehead, and immediately, a dull ache began to pulsate within my brain. The pain intensified rapidly, evolving into a debilitating migraine that felt as if my brain was being ripped apart. Overwhelmed, I crumpled to my knees, and I sensed a warm fluid trickling from my nose. To my horror, I realized it was blood. With a command from the hooded man, his soldiers hoisted me back onto my feet. He addressed me once more, his voice frigid and menacing.
"Do you understand me now, foreigner?"
he demanded. Still reeling from the agony and the blood loss, I was too stunned to respond. The hooded man repeated his question, and to my astonishment, I could now comprehend his words. It was as if a switch had been flicked, granting me the ability to decipher this alien language. The man's question echoed again in my mind.
"Do you understand me now, foreigner?"
A soldier's hand struck my face, and I tasted blood in my mouth. The hooded man's voice was now laced with rage and impatience.
"Do you understand me now, foreigner?"
he snarled. My heart raced with fear and uncertainty, wondering what terrible fate awaited me in this hostile place. With trepidation, I managed to reply, "I can understand you. Don't hit me again. I can understand you." My voice was hasty, desperate to avoid further abuse. The soldiers behind me jeered at my swift response. One remarked to a comrade, "Well, at least we know this one's brain isn't fried from the speech orb. He still understands the language of pain." His fellow soldier snickered. Annoyance flickered across the hooded man's face as he sharply rebuked the soldiers.
"It defeats the point of killing them before we've checked their abilities,"
he scolded. One soldier scoffed, defensively retorting, "This sorry batch isn't worth the crystal it took to get them here. Just a bunch of worthless utility classes. We've yet to find a single mage amongst the whole sorry lot. It's like their world is void of magic. What a miserable world it must be." The hooded man countered,
"Even so, we have to be thorough in our inspections. Who knows, we might find some useful ability amongst some of them."
The soldier dismissed his words with a sneer, replying, "Not likely." It became clear that the hooded man was the leader of these soldiers and the one overseeing the inspections. Fear and uncertainty gripped me as I pondered what awaited me. I had no idea what abilities I harbored or what the results of these inspections would yield. My fate hung in the balance, completely at the mercy of these merciless soldiers and their ruthless leaders. The man retrieved a long rod with a luminous orb affixed to its end from within his cloak. He instructed the two soldiers to restrain me, rendering me immobile. Panic swelled within me, and I tried to break free, but it was futile. One of the soldiers yanked my hair back forcefully, bearing my forehead to the orb-tipped rod. As the man pressed the device against my forehead, I was seized by a searing pain that caused my body to convulse uncontrollably. It felt as though I was being electrocuted, and despite my best efforts to bear the torment in silence, I couldn't help but cry out, "Stop!" The soldiers behind me snickered, and one of them struck me on the side of the head. They coldly ordered me to be silent, claiming, "It's almost done." I feared the ordeal would never end and that I would perish there, but soon enough, the torment ceased, and the man inspected the end of the orb stick device. I gasped for air, struggling to regain my breath. My body trembled, the aftershocks of the brutal ordeal still coursing through me. The hooded man glanced between the device and me, his expression revealing displeasure at what he had discovered. At the mercy of these ruthless soldiers and their heartless leaders, I could only wait and hope that I would survive this alien, hostile place. The hooded man's irritation was palpable.
"What is this? An artificer? Another utility class? This is the 8th utility class I've checked from this world. At least a soldier would have been useful like the last two, but a utility class is of no use at all, especially in the war against the Celastoria kingdom."
He sneered at me.
"He's useless. Throw him in the pit with the other rejects. The guard captain can decide what to do with him."
I was manhandled roughly, and soon found myself standing at the edge of a steep drop. Unceremoniously, they hurled me in, face first. As I tumbled down, my lip was split, and my torso bruised. I landed in a pit, surrounded by other captives who had been deemed rejects. The fear and desperation in their eyes mirrored my own, and I knew that I was in an exceedingly perilous place. I surveyed my surroundings, attempting to understand the environment I found myself in. The pit was shrouded in darkness, damp and reeking with a repugnant odor that made me want to vomit. I could hear the sound of dripping water and the shuffling of feet. The eyes of the other captives weighed heavily upon me, their stares filled with despair and hopelessness. I couldn't help but question my own fate in this strange and hostile environment. Seated in the pit, I felt the pain of my injuries and the gnawing fear of the unknown. I was surrounded by captives sharing my fate, uncertain of what lay ahead for any of us. All I could do was bide my time and cling to the hope that somehow I'd survive this nightmare. As days turned to an indistinguishable blur, Hunger and thirst relentlessly tormented me, leaving my body battered and bruised. Desperation intensified as I wondered if escape from the pit was even possible. Each day, anonymous figures tossed bags of unsorted food into the pit, inciting fierce competition and brutal fights among its inhabitants. From above, I could hear soldiers' laughter, placing bets on the victors. The daily struggle for sustenance left us all bruised and battered. In those days, my existence was reduced to mere survival, driven by the primal urge to eat and preserve my strength. I had become an unthinking, unfeeling animal in the pit. I finally understood the truth of the adage that you never know what you're capable of until you're faced with the need to survive. One day, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the monotony. A group of soldiers peered down at us, their eyes filled with contempt and cruelty. One of them bellowed, "Get up, you lot! The guard captain wants to see you." We were hauled from the pit with rough hands and led away. My dread intensified as I wondered what would become of us. In a large chamber, a man clad in a black cloak awaited, the guard captain in charge of inspections. He surveyed us with disdainful, cruel eyes and spat. "What do we have here? Another batch of rejects? I don't have time for this. Take them to the slave market camp and see if anyone wants to buy them. If not, execute anyone left unsold. I have more important things to do." Fear seized me as I pondered my fate. At the mercy of these ruthless soldiers and their merciless leaders, I could only wait and pray for survival in this hostile and foreign place. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please buy us a coffee and donate to our Cash App. This is a Watson Lee Publishing production. Copyrighted. All rights reserved.